Hello, U.S. history students. This is Mr. Freeze. Mrs. Freeze will be hopping in at some point today, but we're going to teach you guys about the progressive presidents, starting with Teddy Roosevelt. Now, as you can see, the title of this lesson is the progressive presidents. These are presidents that are going to make progress or make changes for the better. So we are really going to dive in to these progressive presidents. So some people consider Barack Obama to be a progressive president because he passed things like Obamacare, which allowed more people to have access to health care. That, for most people, they would consider to be a progressive president. Most people consider President Trump to not be a progressive president so much when it comes to health care, but they might consider him to be a progressive president when it comes to maybe something such as trade, but that's a bit of a stretch there. All right. William McKinley, this is where we're going to start our history of the presidents. He was the 25th president of the United States. So just to give you an idea, President Trump is the 45th president of the United States. So we have about 20 presidents in our history that we're going to discuss. Now, he was a Republican. He actually was a local guy. He went to Allegheny College in Pennsylvania. He was a pretty serious guy and a Civil War veteran as well. Little known fact, if you're ever on Jeopardy, I don't know when you would need to know this for your actual life, but if you're ever on Jeopardy, he is on our $500 bill when they were printing $500 bills. And he was pretty low key. He wasn't a loud, boisterous guy. Now, McKinley's former vice president died of heart failure. His name was Garrett Hobart, which, again, I don't know any time where you will ever need to know who Garrett Hobart was, because Garrett Hobart will die of heart failure while in office. And when a vice president dies, the president gets to pretty much select a new vice president. So McKinley has to figure out, who can I get that matches up pretty well with me? I'm serious. I'm a Civil War vet. I'm really low key. I don't like campaigning. I don't have a lot of energy to do that at this point in my life. Who can I pick that will help cover up a lot of my weaknesses? And so he wound up choosing a man by the name of Theodore Roosevelt, also nicknamed Teddy Roosevelt. Now, Teddy Roosevelt, as a child, was a sickly child. He had asthma, and so his father, in order to basically beat the asthma out of him, sent him outside at all times and forced him to do strenuous activity. In fact, by the time he got to Harvard, he not only had a great set of facial hair right here with these lamb chops, he also was part of the boxing team. He rode. His father would actually even have him smoke cigars in order to strengthen his lungs. When he was young, he would have pet squirrels. He loved the outdoors. And by the time he is a grown man, he is an energetic, healthy, robust individual. But it doesn't mean his life wasn't without some pretty horrible events. In fact, on Valentine's Day, within 24 hours of each other, his wife will die in labor giving birth to their child, and his mother will die on that same day.
That's pretty brutal.
That's
here,
incredible.
by the way. Hello.
Well, welcome to our
discussion.
discussion.
Extra credit.
Not yet. We're going to hold the extra credit till later, but we are going to have an extra credit question in here just to see who's actually listening to our stuff. So at the very beginning, he was a New York State lawmaker, and just like La Follette, who we discussed in Wisconsin, he really, and the pun here, he really railed against the railroads and their influence that they had over the state of New York. And they found very quickly that Teddy Roosevelt, it was very, very difficult to bribe him and coerce him into voting against what was best for the people. Now, like I mentioned, when his mother and wife died within the same 24-hour time period, he left politics for 2 years. And during that time, he heads out west as a rancher and lives his life pretty much as this outdoorsman. And eventually he will be called in by McKinley to be the Assistant Secretary of the Navy. So there he is that rancher when he went out west. And
just by the way, just a really quick little random tidbit. If any of you are very interested in the Roosevelts, like, because we'll talk about them throughout this year, Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt, they're a family that's had a really big impact on the history of this country. There is an amazing documentary. It's a series by Ken Burns. It was on PBS. I think you can still get it. There's a million different ways. I think you can stream it. You might be able to see it on demand. It is a 6-hour, I think there's 6 episodes, 2 hours each. So if you watch all of the episodes, you will total 12 hours of stuff about Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin and Eleanor. Such an interesting family. Really good documentary if you want to know more about the Roosevelts.
And one of the things you'll see in that documentary is when the Spanish-American War breaks out, Teddy Roosevelt will actually come back and he will form an all-volunteer unit of basically all the people he had met during his life. He got like Native Americans from out west when he was a rancher. He got other ranchers. He had his boys from Harvard who were basically bankers join him. These were not trained military men, but he was like, boys, we're going to war against Spain. We need to go down to Cuba and beat up on these Spanish military people. And so he calls his unit the Rough Riders. And it's this really ragtag group of individuals who had no business being soldiers, but they go down there, and for the most part,
they have a cool name.
They do, but their cool name does not make them good soldiers. And they're pretty much getting it handed to them by the Spanish, and morale is really low because these guys are not trained soldiers. And Teddy Roosevelt basically makes the decision at the Battle of San Juan Hill to single-handedly order a charge uphill. Now, if you know anything about...
That seems like it wouldn't be a good idea.
No. If you play Call of Duty or any of that stuff too, you never charge uphill. You always try and get the high ground. And Teddy Roosevelt decides that he is going to charge uphill without really consulting anybody either. And he charges uphill and his soldiers follow him. The Spanish are like, what is he doing? And instead of reacting, they're sort of sitting there puzzled, and he's able to take this battle. It turns the tide of the war, and we are able to kick the Spanish out of Cuba. And Cuba will become important later on in our studies too, so we'll talk more about that later. So he comes back after this, and he's back out east. In fact, he goes back to the state of New York, becomes a Republican, and the bosses in New York, such as Tweed from Tammany Hall, are sitting there going, how do we get rid of this guy? He won't take any of our bribes. He is doing things that are helping people. He's making laws. He's making reforms. We got to get rid of him somehow. So he is really changing. He is being a progressive governor of New York. And they go, how can we get rid of this guy? So, like I said, Teddy Roosevelt promised to fight against the political machines such as Tammany Hall and the corruption in New York. And these political machines, like Tammany Hall, which we mentioned already, had awarded jobs and favors in exchange for votes. But they could not bribe Teddy Roosevelt. And they finally say, hey, McKinley, you looking for a vice president? And McKinley's like, yeah. And he interviews Teddy Roosevelt, and he goes, Teddy, you might be a good pick because progressives in the cities love you because... well, look what you did for New York. You changed a lot of things in New York for the better. And the ranchers out west love him because he moved out west. He had the qualities that make him the perfect running mate or the perfect vice president to help McKinley. Not only because he was loved by the West and the East, urban and rural, he also made up for a lot of things that McKinley lacked. He's a war hero, just like McKinley, and Americans love their military leaders. But he, unlike McKinley, was outgoing. He was nicknamed the bullish madman. He was impulsive. He gave energetic speeches. He was nicknamed a steam engine in trousers. He was extremely determined, and he could not be corrupted. In fact, he was reported to drink gallons of coffee a day. Now, Mrs. Freeze, how much do you drink per day of coffee?
1 or 2 cups.
1 or 2 cups, all right? This guy was drinking gallons of coffee per day. In fact, the quote from Maxwell House, good till the last drop, many people believe that's attributed to Teddy Roosevelt saying that about the coffee he drank, that it was good till the last drop. So this guy was very energetic, to say the least. Now, the thing is, Tammany Hall loved that he was vice president, because do you know what you do as vice president?
Oh, I know.
What?
You don't do almost anything.
Yeah, you basically can break a tie in the Senate.
I kind of like want that job. It's
it
like
would
a
be
job
great.
where you have like this awesome title. Is that Ben hitting a ball on the side of our house? Anyway, it's an awesome title, but then you would just like sit around. It's like in the musical Hamilton, where he talks about John Adams doesn't have a real job anyway. If any of you are Hamilton fans.
Yeah, so the bosses love that Teddy Roosevelt is vice president, because he's not doing anything, and it was a way to keep him busy without him actually passing much legislation or laws. However, McKinley is going to be assassinated by Leon Kolzig, and he is going to be shot twice. He reaches out his hand to shake the hand of Kolzig, and Kolzig shoots him twice with a revolver. Now, we don't have any video of this like we have of the Reagan attempted assassination or the JFK assassination, but he's pretty much at the World's Fair, and he gets shot twice in the stomach. And over the course of a few days, infection sets in, and McKinley will die. Now, Kolzig does get executed for his role in this as being the assassin. He will be executed by the electric chair. Now, quiz time. Ready, Mrs. Freeze?
Yeah.
All right. Who takes over if the president dies?
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah, sure.
Vice president.
So that means that Teddy Roosevelt is now the president of the United States. Now, you might not be aware of this, but Teddy Roosevelt becomes the youngest.
I was just going to answer that. I thought we were.
I'm sorry. I'll give you the quiz. Okay, who was the youngest president ever?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay, and he becomes the youngest president to ever become president.
But he wasn't elected president.
That's right. Who was the youngest president ever elected?
John F. Kennedy.
That is correct. So in this case, we had the youngest president ever. He's extremely energetic. And Teddy Roosevelt, at 42 years, 322 days, becomes the youngest president ever. And when he gets into office, he goes on a progressive streak. He's going to make a lot of changes, which is not normal. Keep in mind, the presidents before this did very little. All of a sudden, Teddy Roosevelt gets in there, and he starts what's called the birth of the modern presidency. We now have a strong president and a weak Congress, where it used to be we had a strong Congress and a weak president. So the president now is going to have more power. And this trend has continued till today. And this is a cartoon from Obama's time in office, but you can see the three branches are supposed to be equal. However, the judicial and the legislative branch are seen as much weaker today than the executive branch. And if I change this to the Trump branches of government, you could definitely argue the same thing right now. It could still carry over. So this trend has continued to exist. So again, I put a Trump cartoon in here just to be balanced. Congress is relatively weak, and the courts are relatively weak, and the presidency led by Trump is very, very strong. And that's how President Trump views it as well. So the first thing Teddy Roosevelt does when he gets in is he says, look, our forests out west are really in danger of big business. Lumber industries are cutting down the trees. Railroads are tearing up land all over the place. And he had lived out west.
He's an outdoorsman.
He had seen the beauty of that area. And so he says, look, I'm going to establish national parks, and I'm going to make it federal land that's controlled by the federal government. 100 million acres was set aside. And he is conserving or saving this land for future generations. He doubled the sites within the national park system. He set up 51 bird reserves, 4 game preserves, and 18 national monuments so that future generations could enjoy those parks. So many of the parks that we still have today out west are only there because of what Teddy Roosevelt did. Now, one of the stories, and this is your extra credit here, is that Teddy Roosevelt, the term teddy bear came from him. In fact, he went out on a hunting expedition with a reporter, and a couple of his advisors tracked down this bear, and they actually caught the bear. They tied it up, and they said, "Here, Teddy Roosevelt, shoot this bear." And Teddy Roosevelt approaches the bear and goes, "Guys, this isn't hunting. That bear is on its last legs. It's going to die pretty soon. It's really old. I refuse to shoot the bear. It was injured." And the reporter goes back and reports on this. Now, the part of the story nobody mentions is that the bear was so injured that Teddy Roosevelt still put a bullet in the bear's head and killed it, but he didn't keep it as a trophy. So the journalist just wrote all this stuff about how Teddy Roosevelt spared the life of this bear. And there was a guy who was making this stuffed animal. And he was like reading this story, and he says, "What should I call this bear?" And
I think I know.
Go ahead.
I think he calls it a teddy bear.
That's right. He calls it a teddy bear.
And I think this leads us to our extra credit for you.
Yep.
If you're listening.
So he basically says to Teddy Roosevelt, he writes him a letter and says, "Can I use your name?" And Teddy Roosevelt's like, "Sure, go ahead. I got bigger stuff to worry about. I got to make a bunch of laws." And so that's where we get the name teddy bear today from. It's actually from Teddy Roosevelt. So for your extra credit, if you include a picture of a teddy bear, if you copy and paste.
Should they be in the picture with the teddy bear?
I will give 2 points of extra credit for that. If you're in a picture with a teddy bear, 1 point if you just put a picture of a teddy bear on your assignment for today.
Or how about also if they don't own a teddy bear, they can draw a picture of one.
That would work too. All right. So here we go. Moving forward. Teddy Roosevelt was also seen as a trust buster because remember all these criminal rich people. We talked about J.P. Morgan and the banking industry and the railroads. We talked about John D. Rockefeller and the Standard Oil Company. He will file 42 antitrust suits, which are basically anti-monopoly suits to break up these big companies. He called these criminal business leaders the criminal rich, and he will break up some of these companies. Now, they are still very, very wealthy, but it allows smaller businesses to at least have a fighting chance to create, innovate, and run their own business. So, like I said, he was known as a trust buster because he was trying to break up these individuals who are some of the most powerful companies and influencers in the entire world, whether that be the beef trust, which is the meatpacking industry, oil, steel, that's probably representing your, Carnegie and American Steel right there. And he is taming them, these big companies here. The third thing he did was settle strikes. So what ended up happening is there was a United Mine Workers Union. And they weren't recognized as an official union, but they wanted more money, shorter workday, and they wanted their union recognized. Now, these miners were pretty important to the safety of the country and the progress of the country because they mine coal. Coal is what people used to put in their homes to heat their homes. And so with winter approaching, he says, "Look, you guys better get back to work." And the workers say, "No, we're not going to do that. We're going to go on strike until you give us better working conditions." And so the threat is that Americans could freeze to death if these workers did not get back into the mines and start digging up coal. And so Teddy Roosevelt brings both sides in, the mine owners and the workers, and he does something called arbitration, which is a settlement imposed by an outside party. In fact, if you ever watch Judge Judy is a form of arbitration. Do they have any other ones? Judge Joe Brown. You basically go on these TV shows and you agree that whatever the judge decides is what you will agree to. And he brings them in and the mine workers go, "We want better pay." And the mine owners are saying we don't want to pay them a lot. We don't want to improve working conditions. And by the end of it, they reach a settlement, which is known as the square deal, where there's a 9-hour day, pay goes up 10%, but there's no recognition of the union, which means that they don't have the right to strike. And so Teddy Roosevelt is seen as a hero, and this square deal, if you ever look at a square, all sides are equal. So Teddy Roosevelt is seen as this fair guy who's getting stuff done, who's making progress. He's a progressive president. Now, number 4, and this probably had the longest lasting impact on America, he passes what is called the Meat Inspection Act of 1906. Now, the Meat Inspection Act has morphed into what today we know as the Food and Drug Act. And what it did, it said you could not have misleading labels or dangerous chemical preservatives on the meat that you were selling to consumers. Anybody want to guess which book that Teddy Roosevelt had read that affected him to push him to make this law?
The Jungle.
That is
by
correct.
Upton Sinclair.
The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. So he's reading these books by muckrakers, just like the rest of the country, and laws are being passed because of it. So there's that muckraking right there, right? There's that Upton Sinclair, the Jungle. It's uncovering the meatpacking scandal, and Teddy Roosevelt is going to force the hand of Congress through pretty much his sheer personality to make laws about safe food, specifically meat, for the American people. So many people wanted Teddy Roosevelt to run for a 3rd term in office. However, Teddy Roosevelt was like, look, Washington stepped away after 2 terms in office. I'm going to step away too. Plus, I've got a lot of other stuff I want to accomplish. By that point, he's in like his early 50s. He wants to get out there and pretty much enjoy life and, go explore. And so he did not run again in 1908 and instead passes off the presidency to William Taft, who has the notorious distinction of being our largest president. He fluctuated from anywhere between 255 to 350 pounds, standing at 6'2". Just to give you guys an idea, I'm about 6'5", and I am about 215 pounds. So this guy was 3 inches shorter than me, and at his lightest, 35, 40 pounds heavier than me, and he will not like being president so much. In fact, Teddy Roosevelt is like, I'll see you later. I am going to go to Africa to hunt big game. In fact, if you've ever watched Night at the Museum, Teddy Roosevelt is played in there by Robin Williams. And in there, he is portrayed as a big game hunter, which he did like to hunt big game. And here he is leaving Taft behind with his baby, all his policies. And he's like, see you later. Take care of him. Teddy Roosevelt then goes out off to Africa, hunts a bunch of lions and big game, and in this case, an elephant. And he leaves Taft. And Taft ended up hating the presidency. In fact, he was a comfort eater, and he ate a lot. In fact, he gained over 100 pounds while he was president of the United States. And one of the urban legends, and it's never been confirmed that this happened, but one of the things that people say happened is that he got stuck in the White House bathtub. Now, there's no confirmation of that at all, but there is confirmation that they did move in a new large tub into the White House, so big that 4 grown men could sit in it. And today, it's actually in a museum. But either way, there was a new tub installed in the White House. So by the time we get to the end of Taft's administration, the Democrats are looking to take back the White House. And Woodrow Wilson, who is a Democrat, see the donkey? Donkey means Democrat. Woodrow Wilson will say, look, I want to be president of the United States. He was from New Jersey, which is a pretty big state. He had a decent shot of winning this election.
Is that at Princeton?
It was. Now, the Socialist Party, not super influential, but it will play a bit of a role in this election, you have this guy named Eugene V. Debs. Now, Eugene V. Debs won't have a big role in this election, but he's actually going to run for the election in a few years. When we get to World War I, he'll run for the presidency again in prison. So we'll actually see what happens to him a few years down the road. So that's why we mentioned him here. And Taft was like, look, he was a progressive president too. He tried to bust up monopolies. He tried to pass progressive laws, but he was upset because people didn't like him as much as they loved Teddy. And he was like, look, I might as well give up. There's so many people in this country who don't like me. He had put on 100 pounds. He was a comfort eater, but he still agrees to be on the Republican ticket. So why is this interesting? Why is this one of the most interesting elections ever? Because Teddy Roosevelt comes back and says, move out of the way, Taft. I'm going to go for a third term here. I know I've been off in Africa, but I want to be president of the United States again. And Taft is like, look, they already gave me the nomination. I'm the nominee. And Teddy Roosevelt basically says, all right, you want to do that? I'm going to form my own party, which he nicknames the Progressive Party. And it stays the Progressive Party until he is giving a speech. And during that speech, an assassin comes up and shoots him in the chest. Now, when he gets shot in the chest, before he's about to give that speech, he actually had the speech in his jacket. So the bullet actually went through his suit jacket into his shirt, and the bullet actually went through and got lodged pretty shallow. It was a pretty shallow wound, but it got lodged in his chest. So when he gets up there to give a speech, he's like, look, I can deal with it. It's just a surface wound here. And he gets up in a white shirt while he's bleeding, gives this unbelievable speech, and takes the pages, which have a bullet hole through them and blood. And as he is giving his speech one by one, he is dropping those pages of the speech into the crowd. And the crowd loves it. And he actually says it's going to take a little bit more than a bullet to kill a bull moose. And after that, it's history. His party becomes known as the Bull Moose Party. Now, just because you give a great speech and you make yourself look tough doesn't mean you're going to win the election. So Wilson ends up winning the election. And you may be saying, how did he do this? I thought people loved that speech by Teddy Roosevelt. I thought people hated Taft. And we haven't even heard of Woodrow Wilson. How did Wilson win? And the reason why he won, it's simple math. The Democrats are going to take back the White House because the Republican Party was split between, if you look at Teddy Roosevelt down here with the Bull Moose Party, and you look at Taft, they were running on a lot of the same ideas. And if just one of them had run, they probably would have had a Republican in the White House or a member of the Bull Moose Party in the White House. In this case, though, Wilson wins with 41.8% of the popular vote. Eugene V. Debs carried 6%. And Wilson is now the president of the United States. So again, if just Taft or Teddy would have run, we would have had either Taft or Teddy in the White House. So it's basic math. The Republicans and the Bull Moose Party were split. They were divided, and the Democrats will win by a landslide. And if you guys are interested in elections, we have an election of 2020 coming up this year. We're going to get into some stuff about how elections work, what the Electoral College is all about, and we're going to predict what the election is going to look like in 2020. So that's it for today's lesson. As you can see, Wilson won an electoral landslide here, and he will gain control of the White House. And this is what the electoral map looked like. And you'll see Pennsylvania had a lot more electoral votes at that point in history. So thank you, guys. Again, don't forget the extra credit. Include a picture of a teddy bear. If you are in a picture with a teddy bear, you get 2 extra credit points. And don't tell anybody about this. Just include that picture in there. If you're listening to these presentations, you deserve the credit. And I will see you guys later for our next unit, actually. Actually, we got one more lesson. And then we're going to be in our new unit in one lesson called World War I. So thank you, guys. I'll see you later, and enjoy your day.